The Eight Immortals Travel East Chapter 48.
This story, it just shatters any conventional understanding of a proportionate response.
Yeah.
What we are looking at here is really a case study in how a localized dispute can trigger an avalanche of absolute devastation, when the parties involved operate without any checks or balances on their power.
Exactly. So our mission for today is unpacking a completely wild, action-packed excerpt from Chapter 48 of the classic text, Journey to the East.
And it is wild.
We want to analyze the battlefield tactics, the underlying psychology of the conflict, and the apocalyptic consequences of this mythological turf war between the Eight Immortals and a Dragon King.
Right, the Dragon King of the Eastern Ocean.
Yes. Okay, let's unpack this. Because reading through these sources, I am in sheer disbelief at the level of destruction over what is essentially a property dispute. I mean, you assume enlightened beings would have some restraint.
You'd think so, right? But the assumption of restraint is really the first casualty in this narrative. But my promise to you, the listener, is that if we look past the surface-level magic, the flying swords and the elemental spells, what emerges is highly sophisticated, grounded study of psychological warfare.
Oh, absolutely.
It forces us to examine the mechanics of unchecked escalation. And, well, how quickly diplomacy disintegrates when immense power is involved.
Okay, so let's establish the facts and the inciting incident that sets this whole powder keg off.
The stolen property.
Right. So two of the Immortals, Dong Bin and Shangu, return to their group with an update on a diplomatic mission. The Dragon King has officially refused to return an item called the Jade Board.
Which is literally just a decorative item.
Yeah, just a piece of jade. And in response to this bureaucratic refusal, Dong Bin casually reports that he went ahead and killed the Dragon King's eldest son and chopped off the arm of the second son.
Just unbelievable.
And the Dragon King, understandably, has retreated into the sea in terror.
Notice how the violence is deployed as a first resort here, not a last one. And this update immediately fractures the group of eight immortals. It reveals very different philosophies on power among them.
Yeah, the reactions are so split.
Right. So the immortal Kaihi is absolutely thrilled by this bloodshed. He actively cheers the violence.
Like a sports fan.
Exactly. He views it as a demonstration of strength. But then you have Golao, who is absolutely furious.
Guo Lao seems to be the only person in the room who understands basic cause and effect.
The only adult in the room.
Seriously. He looks at the situation and realizes that Dongbin didn't solve a problem. He just initiated a massive war over a piece of jade. It's like if you had a mundane roommate dispute over a borrowed sweater, and your response is to commit arson and burn down the entire apartment building.
That is a perfect analogy. The disproportionate response is staggering. And this raises an important question. What happens to the concept of diplomacy in a world where individuals wield godlike capabilities?
Right, because the stakes are so much higher.
Exactly. Guolao argues vehemently that they should have used words. He points out the mathematical certainty of what is coming. I mean, you murder an heir to a kingdom and maim the spare. The monarch is not going to file a grievance.
No, of course not.
He's going to mobilize a massive military force and seek total revenge. So Golao represents the strategic diplomat, warning that bypassing negotiation for brutality carries an unavoidable cost.
And Dongbin skipping the negotiation table and going straight to dismemberment is such a massive miscalculation. It's a complete failure to understand the concept of asymmetrical stakes. Sure, the Immortals might have magic, but the Dragon King has an entire underwater kingdom's military at his disposal.
Thousands upon thousands of soldiers.
Yeah. Guolao's warning highlights that they've traded the stolen item for an existential threat, which pushes the narrative into its next phase, right? The scramble to prepare for the inevitable onslaught.
Right, because Guolao's fury forces the group to face reality. The story shifts abruptly from interpersonal drama to military mobilization. They know a massive army is marching on them, and this brings Zhongli to the forefront.
He steps up as the primary military tactician for the Immortals.
Right. Tige, another immortal, explicitly asks Zhongli for a strategy. Because, let's remember, they are a tiny group of 8 people staring down the barrel of an entire kingdom's wrath.
Just 8 people.
And Zhongli's response is astonishing. He insists they do not need to borrow any outside troops or call in any favors.
Wait, really? No backup at all?
None. His grand plan is to take their micro force of 8 and split it into 4 separate routes.
That sounds crazy.
It does. They intend to use magic to create illusions of a massive military force to confuse the enemy. And the linchpin of this entire operation is a single signal flag operated by Guolao.
Okay, I have to jump in here because what Zhongli proposes,
It's fascinating, right?
well, is it? I have to push back hard on Zhongli's so-called genius here. Is he actually a brilliant strategist, or is he just relying on an unfair magic hack to cover up a terrible military blunder?
How do you mean?
Well, in any conventional military doctrine, if you are massively outnumbered, the absolute last thing you do is divide your already tiny force. Splitting 8 people into 4 groups of 2 sounds like tactical suicide.
It definitely breaks the rules.
Right. If the Dragon King's forces see through the magic for even a second, those isolated pairs would be slaughtered instantly.
Yeah, I see your point. It sounds like tactical suicide on paper, absolutely. But Zhongli is exploiting a known psychological bias. Consider the perspective of the invading army.
Okay, putting myself in their shoes.
If a massive, overwhelming force sees a tiny squad intentionally divide itself and spread out, they don't assume the tiny squad is stupid.
Oh, they assume it's a trap.
Exactly. They assume the tiny squad is irrationally confident because they have a devastating trap hidden from view. Zhongli's strategy is like a hall of mirrors. He is bluffing with magic, yes, but the magic only works because it plays on the enemy's paranoia.
To psychological warfare.
Completely. He realizes he doesn't need to physically defeat 100,000 soldiers. He just needs to make 100,000 soldiers terrified of the unknown.
Wow. Okay, that makes the impending collision even more tense, though, because a psychological bluff requires the enemy to actually fall for the misdirection.
And they have to hold their nerve while waiting for it to work.
Right. And the text paints a terrifying picture of the incoming threat. The Dragon King finally arrives, and the narration notes his army is so massive it kicks up dust that literally obscures the sun.
A classic mythological trope.
Yeah, the visual of blocking out the sun is the ultimate mythological indicator of overwhelming, inescapable doom, and the guy is screaming for revenge against Dongbin.
The dust obscuring the sun serves to heighten that contrast. You have a sky-darkening armada bearing down on 8 individuals standing in the dirt. It is the ultimate test of Zhongli's Hall of Mirrors.
And Zhongli deploys the flanks exactly as planned, despite the overwhelming odds. He positions Dongbin and Shangzi on the left, Kaihe and Shanggu on the right, Tigwai and Guoju in the rear.
Covering all the angles.
Exactly. And he leaves Guolao holding the all-important signal flag. But then Zhongli does something that seems to completely contradict his own trap.
He rides out to meet the king.
Yes. He personally rides out and engages the Dragon King in one-on-one combat for over 50 rounds, with neither gaining a clear advantage.
50 rounds of single combat is a grueling, exhausting stalemate. It requires an immense expenditure of physical and magical energy from both champions.
So why take that risk? Why does Zhongli fight the Dragon King one-on-one for so long instead of just springing the 4-pronged ambush the second the army arrives? Is this just martial ego?
It looks like ego, sure.
Like a need to prove he can go toe-to-toe with the king?
What's fascinating here is how the duel functions as an attention anchor. In the context of ancient warfare, champion combat carries immense cultural weight, but tactically, it is the ultimate bait.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, if Zhongli triggers the trap the moment the army arrives, the Dragon King's forces are still in formation. They have avenues of retreat, their command structure is intact.
Right, they aren't fully committed yet.
Exactly. By engaging in a prolonged, high-stakes duel in the center of the battlefield, Zhongli forces every single enemy soldier to watch him. He fixes their attention entirely on the center.
He is creating a focal point so intense that the enemy loses all peripheral situational awareness. It's like drawing all the aggro in a video game, but doing it to blind the enemy to the flanks.
That is exactly what it is. It is a calculated manipulation of focus. And the text shows us the exact moment the trap springs.
When they break formation.
Yes. The Dragon King's troops see their leader locked in a dangerous stalemate, and they overcommit. They break formation and rush inward to assist him. They bunch up in the center, tightly packed, entirely focused on Zhongli.
And that is the precise moment Guolao waves the signal flag. The illusionary armies suddenly attack from all 4 sides simultaneously.
The jaws of the trap snap shut.
And the result described in the text is incredibly grim. The enemy's army falls into absolute chaos, but not from the weapons of the Immortals.
Oh, it's self-inflicted.
Right. The panic sets in purely from the sudden, overwhelming visual of being surrounded by an unknown, massive force. The Dragon King's forces begin to trample each other, there are countless deaths, and the Immortals barely have to strike any killing blows.
This connects directly to the deadly physics of battlefield panic. Historically, in massive ancient battles, the vast majority of casualties did not occur during the clash of front lines.
They didn't.
No, they occurred during the rout. When a tightly packed formation breaks down in terror, the sheer kinetic energy of a panicked mass is devastating. Soldiers are crushed by their own comrades. The Immortals weaponize fear and compression.
Wow.
They turned the Dragon King's greatest advantage, his overwhelming numbers, into the very mechanism of his army's destruction.
That is brutally efficient. So what does this all mean for the Dragon King? He watches his sky-darkening army crush itself to death based on phantom threats. He realizes the battle is lost, turns, and flees back into the sea.
A total defeat.
Right. And in a conventional narrative, this is the resolution. The defenders outsmarted the overwhelming force, survived the attack, and repelled the invader.
Yeah.
The hero should pack up and go home.
The initial threat has been neutralized. The borders are secure.
But here's where it gets really interesting and frankly horrifying. The Immortals' next move transitions this story from a clever, defensive battlefield victory into a literal apocalyptic environmental disaster.
It really does.
They don't just secure their perimeter, they decide to pursue a scorched earth policy, except it's a scorched ocean.
The escalation breaches a threshold of cruelty that is difficult to comprehend, especially for beings labeled as immortals.
The Dragon King retreats into the vast ocean. In response, Tiaguai and Dongbin bring out a magical gourd and unleash fire from it, literally igniting the seawater.
Setting water on fire.
Yeah, the text vividly describes smoke rising all the way to the heavens as the ocean burns. And while the sea is on fire, Zhongli takes out a whisk and starts sprinkling water, and Jiangli uses a bamboo basket to catch the seawater and funnel it directly into the flaming gourd.
The imagery here demands careful analysis. Look at the tools they are using to commit this atrocity.
The basket and the whisk?
Yes, a gourd, a whisk, a bamboo basket. These are mundane domestic items, kitchen utensils. They are using the tools of everyday household chores to systematically dismantle and vaporize an entire planetary ecosystem.
That is so weird to think about.
It demonstrates a mechanical, almost mundane detachment from the mass slaughter they are actively committing.
It's like domesticated genocide. They are boiling an ocean with the casual energy of someone making tea.
Precisely.
In an instant, the vast eastern ocean is boiled completely dry. The text describes what is left behind as a white wasteland, just an infinite expanse of salt and ash.
And the casualties are total.
Right. The Dragon King barely manages to escape. He grabs his wife and children and flees to the distant southern ocean. But every other living thing, the fish, the dragons, the entirety of the aquatic life in that ecosystem, reduced to ashes.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it forces us to reevaluate everything we thought we knew about these protagonists. We discussed the sheer scale of the escalation earlier, but this outcome is staggering.
It's beyond excessive.
What began as a localized dispute over a borrowed jade board ends in the total annihilation of an entire biome and the extermination of millions of creatures who had absolutely nothing to do with the stolen property.
And the crowning moment of sheer audacity comes immediately after the water boils away.
The real estate crap.
Yes. The 8 Immortals declare victory, walk across the white wasteland of ash, and casually move into the Dragon King's abandoned crystal palace to set up their new camp.